horrific Bushey case, a narcissistic murderer who harmed himself. On a fateful summer afternoon on July 9, 2024, the small town of Bushey in Hertfordshire, England, with its lush green fields and fresh air, was suddenly shaken by a horrific crime. Police received an urgent call from Hannah Hunt, a 28-year-old woman, with a trembling voice reporting that she was about to die. Within minutes, officers arrived at the house on Ashland Close, but none were prepared for what awaited them behind the door. The terrifying discoveries at the scene not only revealed a brutal massacre, but also led police to a suspect with a mind full of hatred and a meticulously planned scheme. Kyle Clifford. This story is not just a murder case, but a tragedy of a shattered family, a failed love, and the cruelty of a person once considered normal. When police entered the Hunt family home, they faced a scene that made even experienced officers shudder. Hannah Hunt, who had just called for help, lay collapsed at the front door, a crossbow bolt deeply embedded in her chest. Though her heart was still beating, her breath was weak, and she took her final breath in the arms of the officers. Deeper inside, police discovered two more bodies in a nearby room: Carol Hunt, 61, and Louise Hunt, 25, Hannah's sister. Louise had also been shot with a crossbow bolt in the chest, her limbs tightly bound with duct tape. Carol, the mother, bore horrific wounds with multiple stab marks on her knees, hands, back, and body, many showing signs of desperate resistance. The house, once a happy family home, was now flooded with blood and horror. The Hunt family was a typical English family, living in a quiet neighborhood in Bushey. John Hunt, the father, was a famous BBC horse racing commentator, with a warm voice resonating at sporting events across the country. Carol, the mother, always supported her daughters in their career journeys. Hannah was a beauty specialist, while Louise, the youngest daughter, ran a pet grooming business called Groom and Glam in their backyard. Louise was known as a sweet, hard-working girl who loved animals. She had worked in the beauty industry before switching to pet care in 2020 and was beloved by clients not just for her skills, but for her friendliness. However, it was Louise, with her open heart and belief in love, who unwittingly became the bridge leading to this tragedy when she began a relationship with Kyle Clifford in 2022. Kyle Clifford, born on April 5, 1998, in Enfield, a small town north of London, was no stranger to trouble. From childhood, Kyle was difficult, often hot-tempered, and prone to fights at school. Growing up in a crowded household with 6 people cramped in a 3-bedroom house, Kyle had few opportunities to build stable friendships. After a short stint in the British Army, where his colleagues saw him as odd and misogynistic, Kyle returned to Enfield and worked as a security guard. Here, his arrogant, hot-tempered, and poor communication skills became even more apparent. When he met Louise, Kyle seemed to find a glimmer of light in his dark life. Louise, with her gentleness and belief that she could change him, began a relationship with Kyle, despite concerns from family and friends. Initially, Kyle appeared to be a caring boyfriend, but his dark side soon emerged. He became controlling, forbidding Louise from wearing makeup or revealing clothes, and would rage whenever she left the house. Kyle was also obsessed with online content promoting misogynistic views, making his violent personality increasingly dangerous. By June 2024, after 18 months of a tense relationship, Louise decided to end things. In a message to Kyle, she wrote, "I'm sorry, Kyle. I don't know if in the future, if we both make an effort, this could become something wonderful. But now I need space to maintain my health and mind. Thank you for the wonderful time. I hope you know how much I loved you and always will." Kyle responded politely, but just hours later, he began sending continuous messages, begging for attention and blaming Louise's family for separating them. The breakup pushed Kyle into a state of desperation and hatred. He believed that without Louise, his life had no meaning, and if he couldn't have her, no one could. From June 30th, Kyle began planning his revenge. He researched methods of murder, purchasing a crossbow and arrows for £357, a butcher's knife for £89, along with rope and tape from various stores. He even checked John Hunt's work schedule to ensure he wasn't home, stalked Carol's Facebook page, and checked weather forecasts to choose his day of action. The night before the crime, Kyle even searched for information about a prison scandal, seemingly preparing himself for the prospect of being arrested. On July 9th, Kyle acted. He brought a bag of Louise's clothes and a thank you card to the Hunt house. Carol, unsuspecting, invited him in. The moment he crossed the threshold, Kyle revealed his true nature. He stabbed Carol multiple times until she collapsed. Then he took the crossbow and waited for Louise, who was working in the garden, unaware her mother had just been murdered. When Louise entered the house, Kyle tied her up with duct tape and assaulted her for over 2 hours. When Hannah arrived home, she only managed to send a distress message before Kyle shot a bolt into her chest. With her last bit of strength, Hannah crawled to her mother and sister, witnessing their deaths before passing away herself. Police arrived at the scene just minutes later, but too late to save anyone. Kyle, after killing Hannah, left the house at 6:55 p.m., covering the crossbow with a white cloth and driving away. Thanks to security cameras and the Hunt family's testimony, Kyle quickly became the primary suspect. A large-scale manhunt was launched across North London and Bushey. The next morning, police raided Kyle's house in Enfield, finding letters he had written to his family and himself, expressing intentions to commit suicide after killing Louise. That afternoon, an anonymous call reported Kyle hiding in a nearby cemetery. When police surrounded the area, Kyle shot himself with the crossbow. But instead of dying, he was paralyzed from the waist down due to the bolt piercing his spinal cord. Over the next 2.5 months, Kyle underwent numerous surgeries and was closely guarded. By September 16th, he was healthy enough to be interrogated, but continuously responded, "No comment," to the clear evidence of his crimes. At trial, Kyle pleaded guilty to murdering Carol, Louise, and Hannah, but denied the charge of sexually assaulting Louise, forcing the Hunt family to endure painful days reliving the case details. Ultimately, Kyle was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, with an additional 30 years for other charges. The judge described him as a completely self-pitying individual with absolute contempt for women. The story didn't end there. During the investigation, a shocking detail was discovered. Kyle's brother, Bradley Clifford, was also serving a prison sentence for murder. In 2017, Bradley, then 24, drove his Ford Mustang into a motorcycle carrying 2 teenagers, Sohan Khan and Joshua Francis, after Sohan had broken his car's mirror during an argument at a pub. Sohan died, and Joshua was seriously injured. Bradley was sentenced to 23 years in prison, but more frightening was that just weeks before Kyle's actions, he had called Bradley in prison to share his plans. Bradley, knowing his brother's intentions, did nothing to prevent them. The Bushey case was not just a tragedy of loss, but also raised questions about the nature of evil. The Clifford brothers, raised in the same family, both became murderers. Was this a random coincidence or a deeper pattern? Louise, Hannah, and Carol, lovely and passionate individuals, paid the price for Kyle's brutality, while Sohan Khan became a victim of Bradley's rage. What remained was the pain of those left behind, and a reminder that evil can sometimes hide in the most ordinary facades.